that they can understand, they observe. Things that make sense to them, they observe. Things that are empirical, they observe. Other things they have tended to dispense with. Actually, things that were pretty important to earlier generations of Jews. So most liberal Jews don't think a lot about a Messiah who's a person, or about reinstituting the priesthood or the system of sacrifices, or what happens to us after we die. And yet, none of us can help but wonder about that last question: what happens to us after we die? And our tradition offers a vast library of images and ideas about death and about what follows death. Now, no one can really be an expert on the subject of life after death in the sense that someone can give us a firsthand report of the journey there and back. But if there is anyone in the Jewish community who can be regarded as an expert on the subject, it is our speaker tonight, and we're very fortunate to be able to learn from him. Reb Simcha Raphael was ordained by Reb Zalman Schachter Shalomi. He completed his doctorate at the California Institute of Integral Studies. He served as an adjunct professor of religion at LaSalle University and Temple University. Currently, he's on the faculty of the Art of Dying Institute of the New York Open Center, and he works as a psychotherapist and spiritual director in the Philadelphia area. He's a fellow of the Rabbis Without Borders Network. And most pertinent to the subject of our Shabbaton, he is the founding director of Da'at, the Institute for Death Awareness, Advocacy, and Training. And he's the author of numerous publications on the subject, including the groundbreaking Jewish Views of the Afterlife. And he's the co-editor of Jewish End-of-Life Care in a Virtual Age, Our Traditions Reimagined. We look forward to a provocative and informative Shabbat together tonight and tomorrow morning. Reb Simcha, it is a pleasure to have you with us, if only virtually. We welcome you and look forward to learning from you.
Thank you so much. And both my parents are not alive, but with your introduction, if my parents were around, they would have a lot of nuggets in hearing that. And I want to share with each of you that Poughkeepsie has a very special place in my heart, in that I've actually been teaching on death and dying for, I hate to say it because then I sound old, but almost 40 years. And the very first full weekend of teaching that I did on death and afterlife in Judaism was in Poughkeepsie. We even called it Jewish Renewal. There was a B'nai Or Chavurah in Poughkeepsie. I think there's a few survivors from that era. And right, Jean and Judy were there. You're right. And I taught, I don't know if it was in your house, but I taught that weekend also. And the Jewish Community Center of Poughkeepsie brought me in. And I did something on death and afterlife, a conversation with elders. I remember. And some people walked in the room and it was like, is this the bingo? And I said, no, this is the talk on afterlife. So no, we're looking for bingo. So I got about 5 or 6 people who would rather talk about afterlife than bingo. And over the years, I've had a few more than 5 people show up because as Rabbi Paul says, it is a question of great curiosity. Okay, so this here, I'm gonna share my trip to the Caribbean. I mean, my son. This is what we're doing. We're doing exploring Jewish views of the afterlife from a contemporary perspective. So I want to thank Vassar Temple and Congregation Shir Chadash and Beth Temple Beth-El and the Jewish Federation, and thank all of you. And thank Mike Fessler. Back in the day, Rabbi Fessler and my wife were both rabbis of 2 congregations that merged. And I believe Rabbi Miriam Hyman was around, and we did a Rosh Hashanah service together, the 4 of us one year. So it's nice to see each of you. Okay, so there's a story about how I got into this that goes like this. When I was in my early 20s, I had a friend. He was from a frum family, and we'd been in high school together. We had been in college together, and it was a Saturday evening, and I was one of these like hip Jewish guys. I was cooking for my date. I was 22, 23 years old. I had a date. I was cooking a meal. He was helping me cook the meal. And then he said, as he did every Saturday night, he would go see his father after Shabbos. He left. The meal turned out okay. After in those years, I didn't have to go home for a babysitter. We can go out on the streets of Montreal at 2:00 in the morning. And we came out of a cafe, a club, and there was a full moon. And I pointed to the full moon and I said to her, the woman I was with, I said, there's something very auspicious about that full moon. I don't know what it is, but there's something very auspicious about it. I went home, I went to sleep, and then at 5:30 in the morning, the phone rang. It was another friend of mine telling me the friend I had been with earlier that evening had just been killed in a car accident. And if you would have said to me, Simcha, you're going to spend decades of your life talking to people about death and afterlife, I would have said, you know what, that's somebody else's story. That wasn't how I imagined my life. But very early on, I felt a sense of his presence. Let me show you something here. This was back in the day. This was, we buried him, and it was, the sign said Mount Pleasant Memorial Park. There was nothing pleasant about burying a 22-year-old kid in the dead of Montreal winter. But we felt, I and other friends felt a sense of his presence. We were sitting in the Shiva house, and it was like 2 in the, 2 in the afternoon or at night. And said, didn't he feel like he was in the room? He appeared to me in a dream. There's a whole tradition of the deceased appearing in dreams. And as Rabbi Paul said, there was nothing there. That nobody was talking about it in those years. I date myself because some of you remember Maharishi Mahesh Yogi and the Beatles and Mia Farrow were all meditating together. And so, the Buddhist lamas talked about the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and then, certainly there's a Christian view in afterlife. And when I asked and I already had a degree in Jewish studies, but I asked the people I knew, what does Judaism have to say about life after death? Nobody had anything to say. Rabbi, did they teach you that in rabbinical school, Rabbi Polish? When you went to rabbinical school, they do a course on Jewish view. You see, there was nobody had anything. Actually, so let me ask you a question. I'm not going to do a whole long thing. We're not doing long narrations, but I want to ask a couple of people: did you learn anything about life after death in Judaism? Put up your hand if you did. Look at a gallery view. A few people are putting up their hand. Joel Kelson, what did you learn?
Rabbi Gollum, who's a senior scholar of Vassar Temple, gave a class on Jewish views on death and the afterlife. It was very interesting.
So that's already a 2.0 version, because when you grew up younger, that nobody talked about it. Right?
Well,
in my Catholic class, everybody would have taught. I beg your pardon?
I'm sorry. My dad was very interested in the idea, and like there was a movie, The Reincarnation of Peter Proud, he always liked. He was very interested in the subject.
Watch this.
He was a cardiologist.
So put up your hand if they taught you nothing about afterlife in Judaism. It's right? Or let's see. Let me. How about this one? Who do I have a reader? Which Rabbi Altman, can you be my reader tonight? Are you
sure, but we just lost the screen.
No, I wanted to see you. I wanted to see whether I was asking,
okay.
Putting it.
Sure.
Okay, so read this one, please.
Judaism celebrates life and the living. It dwells on life here rather than on the hereafter, as other religious faiths do. Life is precious, the here and now.
I'm going to go on and off. Don't get dizzy. Put up your hand if you heard that one. Put up here. Okay. Look at your gallery view. So here's what I have to say. It's true, but it's only half true. Judaism believes in life here and now. We make Shabbos in this world, and you know, when the time of Mashiach comes, and you know, even in the Reform movement, there's at least a messianic era, if not a Messiah, right? It won't be in a transcendent realm. It's going to be here. Our task as Jews is to become Mamlechet Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh, a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, and to make this world holy. But that doesn't mean that Jews don't believe in life after death. After the Holocaust, nobody wanted to talk about afterlife. In the 20th century, what was the name of? Oh, here I have another slide. What was his name? That this is going to have another. Dead is dead. What lives on are the children and the good deeds. Simcha Freud, that's right, Simcha Freud, right? The famous Simcha Freud. Freud said, standing beside a dead body of a loved one, human beings invented spirit and the afterlife. The scientific world says consciousness is an epiphenomenon of the brain produced by the firing of firing of neural synapses. So that was the world in which, that was the worldview, the brine in which we were pickled. And so nobody wanted to talk about afterlife after the Holocaust. And with science, nobody wanted to talk about it. But you ever see Fiddler on the Roof? Fiddler on the Roof is an afterlife story. In the pre-modern world, in the world of Isaac Bashevis Singer and the Hasidic masters, in the world of the Kabbalists, even in the world of the rabbis, there was never any question about some kind of continuity of consciousness after death. So there I was, this 22-year-old kid, and there was nothing in the Jewish world. So I ended up, my teacher Reb Zalman said, oh, afterlife, you want to learn about afterlife, go here, here, and here. And I wrote my doctoral dissertation, and then later it became Jewish Views of the Afterlife. I never imagined I would have a 25th anniversary edition. But basically, my story is I wrote the book that I wanted to read when I was in my early 20s, and my closest friend was killed in a car accident. Jill Orbach has her hand up, please. Where?
Okay, so when I was in college, I wrote a paper on the comparison of death and dying amongst the various different religions. And then one of our rabbis taught a class and spoke about Kabbalah and the idea that Jews really do believe in the afterlife. So I thought it really was interesting because when my father died, he had a little workshop, and my mother wanted to clean it out. And I said, don't clean it out. His spirit's still in there playing. And that's the way I really felt. So
good. I'm gonna give you some images on now. And so before I start talking a little bit about Kabbalah, and it's not only Kabbalah, because in fact Kabbalah is, the Kabbalists didn't go run away and live in the woods. The Kabbalists studied Torah and Mishnah and Talmud and Shulchan Aruch and Halacha. And so Kabbalah is like Jewish understanding 2.0 or 3.0. But let me give you a framework for where we're going to go. The way we think about afterlife is a function of how we think about what it means to be alive. Okay, just stay with me. The assumption that we make, what it means to be a human being, determines what we think about what happens to human beings after death. So in the scientific rationalist view, dead is dead, right? So what does it mean what's afterlife in that point, in that worldview? Nothing. Gornish mit nicht. And that, right? Or there's the Christian view. Rabbi Altman, you get to read from the Council of Florence. You didn't, I don't know if they taught you that one in rabbinical school.
No, but this I'll figure out. None of those outside the Catholic Church, not Jews, nor heretics, nor schematics, can participate in eternal life in heaven, but will go into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels, unless they are brought into the Catholic Church before the end of life. Council
So,
of Florence, 1440.
First of all, you have the sense of in Christianity, you're born with original sin, and then you have to have some kind of penance, right? And then if you go down, what does it look? You know, then it's a two-tiered elevator. It goes down, and what does it look like? Someone call it out. Fire, burning, hell, torment. And if you go up, what do you see when you go up?
Light,
Light.
What else?
peace, love, God.
And there's clouds. The reason why there's clouds is because they let you smoke at the bar in heaven. Okay, so that you need to know that. So that's sort of the Christian fundamentalist view. In Kabbalah, and Kabbalah is we'll have to do another class on Kabbalah, a longer one, but basically the heyday of Kabbalah emerges from the 11th century Guadalajara, Spain, and then if some of you have been to Tzfat, that Kabbalah comes into Tzfat in the 1500s. So in Kabbalah, they ask the question about what's the destiny of the human being, and a human being. This is the only fancy language I'm going to use tonight. Is a bio-psycho-cosmic continuum. A bio, we're bodies, right? Psycho, emotion, cosmic. We connect with all. Actually, so I'm gonna come back to this in a second. But in Kabbalah, to be alive is to be an amalgam of physicality. How you doing? You know, you're sitting on the chair. I had to make sure my Zoom chair has a good tush kush, right? If you sit a long time, and I had to make sure that my computer is in a good angle so my neck doesn't crane, right? And emotion, you know, there's when you're in a room, I miss that vibe, you know, but whatever, we'll get back. Right. And then there's the mental, the cognitive part, and then we connect to spirit. We connect to all. So to be a human being in Kabbalah is this. This is the bio-psycho-cosmic continuum. We are body, mind, emotion, and ultimately we connect to the cosmos. You know, when we say Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, we're saying we are connected to the all. In death, each of these parts separate out. This is what I'm gonna share with you tonight. Is the Kabbalistic view says that afterlife is not a location. Okay? The fundamentalists want you to believe that heaven and hell are locations. My son went to Indiana University, and when I would drive from Bloomington to Indianapolis, there was a sign on the highway. It said, "Avoid hell, repent." And I always stopped my car and checked my GPS because I didn't want to take a wrong turn and end up in hell. Okay? The mystical point of view is that while we're alive, we're on a journey. And, you know, I can see by some of your faces, you've been on a journey. You know, we've all been on a journey these past 2 years. Sometimes we know where the journey is going and sometimes we don't, right? In death, the journey continues. And that's what I'm going to show you tonight. Do you remember when before GPS, my kids don't know how to read a map. My kid, they don't even know how to pick up the damn phone, but that's another story, right? You remember when we would go to AAA to get a triptych? So I'm going to show you a triptych of the afterlife, and that's what we're going to work with here tonight. This is the triptych for the journey of the afterlife. My charts start at the bottom. Okay, this is my you know, sort of
the four worlds.
The four worlds. but it's also based on we are body, emotion, mind, and spirit. That's who we are. So if you look, this is the Yud Hey Vav Hey, and it's done vertically, not horizontally. So here's the head, and here's the arms, and here's the midsection, the heart, and here's the body. In death, I'm giving you the whole journey, and then we're going to go fill it in with text. There's a process of physical separation, separating out from the body that corresponds with the Shiva. I'll talk about that. There's a process of emotional purgation, cleaning up the schmutz under the rug, corresponds with the year of St. Kaddish. Intellectual contemplation in the sense of seeing God, and spiritual unification in the sense of merging with God. So this is the triptych that we're going to use to look at some of these texts and fill in something of the journey of the soul. Okay, you with me? Because I'm just setting this up. Let's see, I have a little bit, I have about 25 more minutes to tell you everything I learned in about 25 years of reading Jewish texts. So I have to speak quickly. Let me take a question or two, but I want a question, not a 3-minute narration, a question or two on what I've said so far. Let me just summarize it. Yes, we believe in afterlife. We need a different lens to think about it. We've been influenced by the Christian idea of heaven and hell. If I said to you, what does hell look like? You would see images of Christian Renaissance art. That's really, we've been more influenced by Christian Renaissance art than we've been influenced by medieval midrash, right? And so what we need to do is go into the texts of Zohar, a mystical commentary on Torah, to look at the different stages of the journey of the soul. Okay, 2 questions and then we'll go on. Anyone? And if you put it in the chat, Rabbi Altman will read your question. What, you're shy? I mean, is this a Jew? Wait, are these Jews I'm talking to?
I have a question.
Please.
If when you ask,
wait, who's that? Oh, Emily. Okay, I didn't.
Sure. My name is Emily. I'm new to Poughkeepsie, but from Philadelphia, Rabbi. So we have that in common. When you addressed all of us, you asked about us as, we all have our own Jewish education, different levels of it, different experiences.
Oh, wait. I want
Sure.
you to ask a question. Be
I have
precise.
a question.
Go.
So my question is, when you addressed all of us and you asked us you asked thumbs up or whatever, put your hand up if you've heard about death and dying in the afterlife in your Jewish education, and nobody had their hand up. Why do you think it is? What have they been keeping from us?
This is a great question.
Thank
Part of it is hardwired into Judaism. If we were doing biblical views of the afterlife, there was an ambivalence about afterlife, even in biblical tradition. Abraham is gathered to his ancestors. Jacob, as we'll do tomorrow, is gathered to his ancestors. But some of the later biblical texts are also keep a distance from the afterlife. Similarly, Maimonides was a bit of a rationalist. Maimonides was more concerned with sort of the messianic afterlife rather than individual afterlife. And Freud and Holocaust and Christianity. So there's a whole variety of reasons why what I had to do, what we're doing tonight, is archaeology, and we're reclaiming stuff. But it's really Jewish thought went through the filter of 19th and 20th century rationalism, and we threw out the baby with the bathwater. We lost Kabbalah, we lost altered states of consciousness, we lost angels, and so the last 20 years we've been reclaiming a lot of that. Okay, thank you for the question. Another one.
Thank you.
Well, Rabbi Hyman, you should just ask your question.
Go.
Okay, I put it in the chat, but I think you may have addressed it already. I was just going to ask if Christianity's focus on the afterlife is one of the things that makes Jews not want to talk about it.
Well, I think that's true in contemporary times. There was a Gallup poll where they asked Catholics, Catholics, Jews, and Protestants, do you believe in afterlife? And Catholics was 83%, the Protestants were 79%, and the Jews were on like 23%. So that was right. I think that was true in modern times, but remember, Judaism precedes Christianity. And there were, in the world of Jesus, there were a lot of different. I wrote a paper on sort of Jewish beliefs at the time of Jesus when I was an undergraduate, and there were, or messianic, there were a lot of different views out there, and a lot, some of the, there were rabbis who would have encounters with spirits. There's a lot of these kind of tales in the Talmud. So I think it's more of a modern response to Christianity. Yeah. Okay. We'll keep going and we'll come back. Okay. So let me go back to my triptych and show you where we're going next. Okay. There's something I want to talk about in a moment called chibut hakever, the pangs of the grave. It's said to be a 3 to 7 day period when the soul is kind of sticks around or confused. And then there's some deathbed vision. So the next part that we're going to do is we're going to look at the early stages of the afterlife journey. Okay, so I'm taking you into Guadalajara, Spain. I don't know, Rabbi, we didn't tell people we're time traveling. I hope nobody gets nauseous when we right. If we went around and we interviewed the Kabbalists and said, what do you have to say about life after death? In the chat is a link to the text that's on my website, these texts that we're going to do, where they answer these questions. So let's go to the first text. This is one of my favorite texts. Please go.
Rabbi Yehuda said, for 7 days the soul goes to and fro, from the house to the grave, from the grave to the house, mourning for the body.
Okay. This is one of my favorite graphics. I'm biased. They didn't teach you that in Hebrew school, did they? Right? What does it mean? For 7 days, the soul goes to and fro from the grave to the home, from the grave to the home. It means souls stick around. It means death happens. Death is a transition. And at least according to this worldview, there's some sense of a transition of souls sticking around. Now, wait, I need to say something to the rationalists in the house, okay? I don't know if I don't know if there's any rationalists in the house. It's a Reformed temple. Maybe we might find a couple of them, okay? I once taught in Wilmington, Delaware, and they were all chemical scientists for DuPont. I really got into trouble. To the rationalists in the house, I want to say I'm not selling belief. Because if I say believe and you say I don't believe, then we're in an adversarial relationship. And I don't want to be in an adversarial relationship. I will sell you a copy of my book, mind you, but I'm not selling belief. You can find it on my website or you can find it on Amazon. This is the third edition, which has a new chapter on spirits, ghosts, and dibbuks in Yiddish literature. So I'm not selling belief, but at least I want you to understand what our tradition has to say. Ultimately, everybody has to do their own meaning making around dying and death. Okay? I want to say this gently, not get in trouble. Hey, none of us getting out of here alive. Don't relax, not tonight, okay? Not tonight. But the reality is, and especially in these past 2 years of COVID, death is hardwired into the human condition. Ultimately, everybody has to do their own meaning making around dying and death. And this, learning what Jews had to say about life after death has been helpful for me. And I sometimes find it's helpful for folks, but you have to make that your own deliberation on that. But I want to hear if anybody wants to comment on that text. For 7 days, the soul goes to and fro from his grave to his house, mourning for the body. What's that correspond with?
Shiva.
The Shiva.
It's Gene. Hi, it's Gene here. Hi,
Let's go.
It's wonderful to see you. So what's coming up for me is that soon after my father died, I was driving somewhere and he appeared.
Yeah.
He appeared in my vision. And what's coming up for me based upon what you're teaching us tonight is that, well, it's one thing to think of myself as envisioning my dad, but, maybe my dad was, kind of wanting to come back to me.
Well, it seems to be, at least within this framework, it's a kind of two-way street. Now, some souls, you know how some people go through life experience, they have disappointments and they go on with it. And some people go through life's disappointments, they go through like bitching and moaning. Some people may get out of here more clearly. Some people may have done their work and leave. I don't want to say the soul always sticks around, and I don't want to say it never sticks around. But I want to say you don't have to go to Shirley MacLaine and the Buddhists to understand that we at least have a theology and a spirituality around dying and death. Another question, and then we'll go back to the text because we got to go through Gehenna, and I have to make sure I have enough time to get you in and out of Gehenna. Give me what time are we coming in for landing? Around 9:20? Is that? Let me see what I think I set my timer. Yeah, but I'm about
9:15, yeah.
9:15. Okay, so I got to speak quickly.
Rabbi, I wonder if I could ask a question. So what I understood, at least from what I was taught in a class that our rabbi was teaching several years ago, was that if you're a true tzaddik, that when you return to God, you do not have to come back. That each of us, when we're alive, has things that we're supposed to do in our life. And if we're really, truly a tzaddik, you've done it and you do not have to come back. But if you have not, you have to come back and live another life until you reach nirvana or whatever you want to say.
Well,
I don't know whether that's true or not.
No, well, that's at least the Jewish understanding of reincarnation. You have to keep coming back to do mitzvahs. So I'm going to keep going. So this corresponds with the Shiva. This corresponds with the Shiva. And what do we do at the end of the Shiva? We go on a diet. Okay, I know that. But what else do you do at the end of the Shiva? You walk around the block. I have to go out of here to see if do you know that tradition? You walk around the block. Anybody put up your hand if you know. Why do you walk around the block? Stephen Rue, why do you walk around the block? Mute yourself. Unmute yourself.
I'm not sure, but I have a question because somebody hung hard-boiled eggs on our doorknob too.
Okay, I'm going to stay on target. You walk around the block on a psychological level because you were saying going back into life.
They use the expression you get up. That much. You
get up. But you're also walking the soul on its journey. You're saying we can take you this far, and now you have to go the rest of the way on your own. For the rabbis now, the kavanah is when we walk around the block, we're accompanying your father. Who are those? Abraham and Jacob were gathered to the ancestors. Who are the ancestors to whom your father has been gathered? So this is the way we use the philosophy in terms of a practical pastoral approach to help people connect with this. Okay. I'm gonna cover a few more texts and then we'll take a few more questions. So if your hands are up, but I want to make sure we get a little more out here. There's a whole series of visionary experiences that are described here. So, Rabbi, read us this next one, please.
Rabbi Shimon said, "Have you seen today the image of your father, your mother? For so we have learned that at the hour of a person's departure from the world, their father or mother and other relatives gather round, and they see them and recognize them. And likewise, all with whom they have associated in this world, and they accompany their soul to the place where it is to abide."
So I've only taught you two texts, But this is very interesting. You hear the stories in hospice much more of somebody sort of being mostly out of it and saying, "Oh, my father, my father." I had a client many years ago. She said she was sitting in her mother's hospital bed, and her mother looks up and says, "Oh, Mom, I never introduced you to my daughter. The dying woman has a vision of her deceased mother who she's introducing to her daughter who's sitting there." And if I open the mic up now, we can take the next 40 minutes and hear stories. But I want you to know that these things go on. And today there's more resuscitation technology than any other point in human history. Okay, this stuff corresponds with the near-death experience. But I don't know how they knew this in 12th century Guadalajara, Spain. But they did. You know, they saw death in front of their eyes. They did. You know, death didn't take place in the ICU or didn't take place on the New Jersey Turnpike. You know, death took place right in front of their eyes. You with me? We're still on the first stage of the journey. Okay, so let's do another. Okay, this one, please. So let me say, there are two kinds of visions. There's the mommy, daddy, bubby, zadie level. There's the parents, grandparents, and then there's the mythic guides. Go.
No person dies before seeing the Shekhinah, and because of its deep yearning for the Shekhinah, the soul departs in order to see her. And with the Shekhinah, there come three ministering angels to receive the soul of the righteous. When one departs this world, they see many strange things on their way and meet Adam, the first human, sitting at the gates of Gan Eden, ready to welcome all who observe the commands of their master.
Okay, so in the first one, the deceased see a vision of some familial being, but here, again, it corresponds with the near-death experience. The Hindus see Krishna, and the Christians see Jesus or Mary, and the Buddhists see the Buddha, and Jews see someone from the Federation. We don't have an inherent iconography because of the Jewish prohibition against images. Like if they say you see Adam, we don't, it's not like we have a whole historical tradition of artwork of Adam. The Shekhinah, listen, modern Jewish feminism notwithstanding, the Shekhinah is not a woman with tallis and Birkenstocks. Okay, though if you look at www.shekhinah.com, if you look at my wife's website, you might find images along those ways. But in rabbinic literature, the Shekhinah is a sort of a luminescent presence. So the Shekhinah appears with angels, there are angelic beings. I don't know how this works, okay? But I have to tell you this story. I love to tell this story. I had an uncle who turns out he was probably from Ukraine. He ran away from the Tsar's army, and he came to Canada right after World War I. And he was like many of the men of his generation. He worked 20 hours a day. He was rabidly anti-religious. He hated religion. One time I wanted to make Havdalah in his house, and he literally threw me out. Get out. I said, okay, I'll put away the candle. Another time he said, I nearly died, and the Rabban Gamliel came and said, Yoine, it's not your time. I nearly died. He had a near-death experience. And who shows up for him is Rabban Gamliel from his Talmudic youth in a yeshiva in Sadagora. And when I heard that story, it was so serendipitous. This wasn't a guy who would have read Raymond Moody's Life After Life, or would have seen Warren Beatty, or, with the movie Heaven Can Wait, or Defending Your Life. Remember some of those early near-death experience movies, or Ghost, or any of that. This was a guy who, wasn't well read and wasn't culturally involved because he worked 20 hours a day, but he had some kind of mythic guide appear to him. So it's almost like maybe there are these guides that get painted in the religious symbolism of different cultures. I don't know, but I think the implications of that is to tell people when they're dying, don't worry, you're not going to be alone. There are going to be people on the other side to guide you there. One of my clients, she was afraid for her father. He's going to get lost after he dies. I said, you know what, your father's going to be guided where he's going. I think you're the one who needs to be, needs a little bit of help. You seem a little bit lost to me. So who do you imagine being there for you? My mother's father was killed in a car accident when she was 10 years old. I said, Mommy, you might see your father one day. She said, oh, wow. She was in her early 80s, and she wouldn't have seen her father for 70 years. I said, Daddy's probably going to show up late. He's probably going to get stuck at Home Depot or something. My father was always late for Shabbos dinner. I couldn't guarantee that he would show up on time for my mother, but her father might. Okay, one more, and then we're going to have to go into Gehenna. Okay, another one, please.
When God desires to take back a person's spirit, all the days they have lived in the world pass in review.
This is the life review. This is the work of the ethical wills. We'll talk about that tomorrow when I talk about Jacob's deathbed. But the ethical wills is where you have a chance to look at your life. So if you haven't had a chance to write your ethical will, now's a chance to be able to do that. But let me go back in a second to the triptych and show you where we've been. Okay, so this is the separation, and there are these deathbed visions. There's the ancestral guides. There's the mythic beings. There's the life review. At some point, and it corresponds to the Shiva. At some point, this phase of the journey ends, and another period. They say that everybody eventually moves on, but not before 30 days, which is interesting, which is Shloshim. But then there's this realm called Gehenna. I want to talk about that. It corresponds with Kaddish. Gehenna is problematic for us moderns. Okay, you hear about torment and we have trouble with it. With our sort of with our relative moralism and all of that. But think of it like this. Imagine your friend Joe, okay, comes up to you and he gets really pissed off at you and he kicks you in the shins and smacks you across the face. And I come up to you 6 months later and I say, whatever happened to your friend Joe? And you go, Joe, did I ever tell you what happened with him? I'm still so angry with him. What's my point? Emotions persist long after the initial point of contact. Okay? And in life, we have a lot of those things, and actually, you can have a fight with your significant other, with someone, and go to sleep the next day, go to sleep that night, wake up the next day, and you got a neck ache because they're a pain in the neck, or you got your lower back hurts because you feel unsupported, or when psychosomatic medicine, you get a bladder infection because you're pissed off, right? What's my point? My point is that we carry these emotions in our body. And if you did an X-ray, you could see my bone structure. If you did an MRI, you'd see my tissue structure. If you do an emotiogram, you'd see here where we carry anger in our jaw, and here's where we carry grief in our chest, and we carry shame in our lower body. Literally, we do. People who do that work know that. It may be that in death, there's a certain amount of unprocessed emotion of life experience, a certain kind of, to schlep a word in from India, karmic residue, certain kinds of remnants of experience that we need a little bit of time to sift through. So this, to me, is my understanding of Gehenna. Now, I want to do a Gehenna text. You didn't know that we have Jewish Dante material. Okay, please.
Gehenna, purgation. There are 5 kinds of punishments in Gehenna, and Isaiah saw them all. He entered the second compartment, and he saw 2 men hanging by their tongues. And he said, "Oh, you who unveils the hidden, reveal to me the secret of this." He answered, "These are the men who slandered, therefore they are thus punished." He entered the third compartment, and he saw there men hanging by their organs. He said, "Oh, you who unveils the hidden, reveal to me the secret of this." And he answered, "These are the men who neglected their own wives and committed adultery with the daughters of Israel."
Well, this is Jewish text, by the way. This is not Dante. This is Dante's text. Now, listen, if you're going to, what do I want to say before I go off screen? And I'll go just go off. What do you, if you're going, by the way, to visit, somebody's in a hospital dying, don't read them this text. To the rabbis in the room, this is not a very good text for pastoral support. Okay, but for pedagogy, for teaching, it is. So here's the story. Teachings on heaven and hell in religious literature are not literal. Again, the fundamentalists want you to believe that they're literal. The mystical, the Kabbalistic understanding is that they're symbolic of states of mind. So first of all, in that text over there, there's a whole genre called midah keneged midah. You sin with the tongue, you hang from the tongue. You sin in a sexual way, you hang from your organs. But here's the thing. What would it be to imagine a period of time where you have, when we had younger kids, we'd put them in timeout. So think of Gehenna as like a period of timeout where in the 12-step programs, they call it the fearless moral inventory. You have a chance to look in the mirror and see yourself unadorned and undefensive. And you look at your life and you saw all the times you shot from the lip and were verbally abusive to people you loved. It might feel like hanging from the tongue. What would it be to look in the mirror and see the times you might have acted with impropriety in your intimate relationships and hurt the ones you love? It might feel like hanging from. So suddenly what Gehenna is in the old system, by the way, in the old system, it's medieval torture. Okay, the texts literally replicate medieval torture. And I know what medieval torture looks like because I raised two kids in the same household. And I saw the older one practicing it on the younger one. I saw it, for years, right? But the new model of Gehenna is rehab. Rehab hurts like hell when you look at your life and you saw the damage that you did and you have a chance to do tshuva, because all of this is against the background of doing tshuva. All of this is against the background of doing tshuva. So I know that the rabbis are going to cut me off soon, but I might need a few more minutes, but I have to show you the connection to Kaddish, because when you think of it, Kaddish, it's really interesting, even more so, at least it is to me. So with Kaddish, we got to go back. Kaddish, the belief that we have is Kaddish redeems the soul from Gehenna. Okay, our saying Kaddish redeems the soul from Gehenna. To which I say, well, what the hell does that mean? Right? First of all, not everybody says Kaddish. Not everybody has a child say Kaddish. But here's how I want to understand this. I call this my Kaddish Gehenna rap. Okay, so let's see. Here's my Siddur. I'm coming into Shul for the first day, right? And I say, Yit Kadal v'Yit Kadash, right? You son of a bee. You didn't leave a life insurance policy. You liked your kids more than you did you liked your work more than your kids. And now I have to say these stupid words that don't say anything about Kaddish. I'm looking at the rabbis in the room. Did you ever have somebody show up like that the first day? Right? And then the response comes back from the soul on the other side and says, and you were a pain in the tuchus to raise. You were always so busy with your friends. You never had any time for your family. You didn't make my life easy. And then it's 2 months, it's 3 months, Yit Kadal, Yit Kadash. You know what, Daddy? You know what I realized? I didn't know you. I didn't know who you were. And the response comes back from the other side and says, you know what? I didn't know who I was either. What did I know? I was 22 when I got married. I was 23 when I had my kids. They taught me to make a living. I didn't know about knowing myself. Since I've died, I've had a few months to think about things. I realized that you were right. 4 months, it's 5 months. It's not a timeline, but it's a process. Yit Kadal, Yit Kadash. You know what I'm thinking today? I never heard you say I love you. I never heard you say I love you. And the response comes back and says, listen, I never heard it in my family. And yes, of course I love you. And I'm sorry. I have regrets for not communicating how much love I do feel for you. It's 8 months, it's 9 months. Yitkadal v'yitkadash. You know what? Today I really miss you. Today I really, really, really miss you. And the response comes back and says, look, I really missed you. I missed you. I made a lot of mistakes. I see that now, and I hope you can find a way for forgiving me. And it's the last day of Kaddish, so we need a better ritual for ending Kaddish, by the way. You know what, Daddy, I've been mad at you, I've been lost, but you know what, I love you and I forgive you. And the response comes on the other side and says, look, take what I can that was good and let go of the rest, and I bless you on your journey. And is that redeeming souls from Gehenna? See, I don't know, but I think it points to a very interesting take home, which is that the relationship between the living and the deceased continues after death. The notion, when we accept that there's some consciousness that survives bodily death and there's some process, and our tradition, and I found a sefer that I'm reading, it's called Ilui HaNeshama, the illumination of the soul, the ascension of the soul, and it says the whole purpose of all these rituals are to sort of help the soul along on its journey. So when we have that assumption, what I want to say is trust the synchronicities and trust the dreams and trust the conversations of your heart, because we lost touch with that. We got robbed of a theology of afterlife to help us process the reality of grief and loss, and particularly if it's in the first year, particularly if it's a complex relationship. I don't think it takes a year. Sometimes it takes years. I mean, I worked with somebody whose father was a raging drunk, and we did some work together in therapy. But at a certain point, he appeared to her in a dream and says, I'm sorry. And it was very, very healing for her. So I promised you that I wouldn't leave you in Gehenna. I have to take you to a little bit further beyond that. So let me at least finish the last two stages of the journey, and then we'll see if we have any. Right. So this is eventually the soul finishes here. This is the emotional purgation. Then Gehenna, Gan Eden is intellectual contemplation. Now the rabbi said three times as much about Gehenna as they did about Gan Eden. If you look in the index of Ginsburg's Legends of the Jews, they have heaven and hell. There's 3 times the amount on hell than there is on heaven, because they were ethicists. They said avoid Gehenna, do mitzvahs. Okay, Jack, I'm going to take your question in just 1 minute. So let's read a Gan Eden text, and then I'll take Jack Fain's question. Can you read this text?
Sure. And then we should wrap up the formal program, and we do have we're going to close in song, and then we can have people,
I'll do 2 texts, and then we'll take them home.
Gan Eden has 2 gates of carbuncle, and 60 myriads of ministering angels keep watch. Each of these angels shine like the radiance of the heavens. When the righteous person approaches, angels remove from them the clothes in which they've been buried, and clothe them with 8 robes of the clouds of glory, and place upon their head 2 crowns, one of precious stones and pearls and the other of gold. And they place 8 myrtles in their hand and praise them. And they lead them to a place full of water surrounded by 800 species of roses and myrtles.
Yeah, I think the ikar here is that angels remove from them the clothes in which they had been buried. We give up our terrestrial identity, and we take on our celestial identity. So that's what Gan Eden is, and it corresponds with the Kaddish, with the Yortzeit. The reciting Kaddish at the time of the Yortzeit elevates the soul every year to a higher sphere in the heavenly Garden of Eden. I can't leave you. I got one. In some places, Gan Eden is not the end of the line, but there's something called Sror HaChaim. Sror HaChaim is mission control for souls. In some places, Gan Eden is the end of the journey. In other places, read one more text, and then I'll come in for a landing.
In the same way as the soul has to be clothed in a bodily garment in order to exist in this world, so is she given an ethereal supernal garment to exist in the other world, and to be enabled to gaze at the effulgence of life radiating from that holy celestial abode, the source of life, Sora Chaim.
And we say, Tehei nishmatot tzura b'tzura chaim, and I say, may their soul return to the source of life. So there's Gan Eden, and then in some places there's this other realm, which corresponds, interestingly enough. Why is my with Yisker? Now I got to do this quickly because your rabbi's going to pull a plug on me. We have a whole tradition eventually of those souls on the other side being available for intercession for us. They can watch over us. So this is at the grave of the Ari, or this over here is Rachel's tomb, where there's a whole tradition of prayer. Fiddler on the Roof from a Sarah is an intercessor. She's a Yenta intercessor. Between this world and the world beyond is a window and not a wall. That's the bottom line. If you don't remember anything else I said, but you remember this one, between this world and the world beyond is a window and not a wall. I think that's it. And there's a self-promotion. Okay. So that's what I have to say about Afterlife. There was one, Jack had a question up. Can I take a question from him? Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry, Jack, sure. I know you've had your hand up a while. Let's just make it quick because we want to bring the formal part of the program conclusion and song, and then we'll do our Oneg Shmooze time in which people can, ask more questions of Reb Simcha.
Okay.
Sure. I want to go back to Rabbi Yehuda and what he said. Was that Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi?
Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
he said the soul goes back and forth for 7 days between the
soul,
grave and
right.
the house.
Right.
How did he determine that?
It's an interesting question. These rabbis were visionaries. It wasn't an intellectual calculation. There's stories about Rabbi Yehuda having come back to visit with his family. There was, some of these rabbinic legacy stories tell us that these were evolved beings that were, and they were seers. Let me just say this, and then I'm going to turn it back over to Rabbi Altman. Many of you, if not most of you, will remember when changing a television channel was walking up to television and going from channel 2 to 13. Remember that? It's been so long ago. Then you didn't have to look around for a remote. And then we got so that was VHF, very high frequency. Then we got UHF, so you can putz around with the dial and you can go from channel 14 to channel 99, and channel 33 was in Vermont. It came, or in Maine, and channel 67 was in Schenectady, or there were some channels you would remember. Then there's cable, and now there's satellite. There are thousands of channels being transmitted ubiquitously all across the planet. Most of us are still perceiving reality at channels 2 to 13. Sometimes we might pick up a channel 22 or a channel 33. But there are people who get the higher frequency channels. Those are the clairvoyants, those are the psychics, those are the Rebbe Yehudas, and there were a number of these rabbis who were visionaries. So what this afterlife stuff teaches us is that there are other modes of perceiving reality besides normal waking consciousness.
I read some of Gloria's techniques on how to be a visionary, and I tried it, and it didn't work.
You need a Luria teacher. Luria would send his students to go lie on the graves of the rabbis in the Galilee to get them to attune to them. Yeah, so we need to reclaim these lost traditions of altered states of consciousness, and then we need to train our rabbis to be able to do that. But I know Miriam was at Reconstructionist Rabbinical College for a while, and if you look at the Kavanah that was put in on Yisker when there was something about even though we say, we're going to say hello to all those beings on the other side, we don't really believe that. So we have, as Rabbi Poller said, rationalism was the Jewish modality for the last 200 years. So we're looking to find a new version, a new vision. So this, my friends, is just a short snippet of the archaeology I've done on Afterlife. I will put my my website in the chat. I'm available to do spiritual direction and counseling and some books that I've written and all of that. So thank you. And tomorrow morning we're gonna look at Jacob's deathbed stories and his legacy to us today. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will say, as an admitted rationalist, it was really fascinating to hear some different explanations and have our minds and hearts opened to a different way of understanding afterlife, and different, but a way that is different for some of us, but very much rooted in our tradition. So we thank you for that and look forward to tomorrow morning with a different kind of text study. So we do want to bring us back to close our Erev Shabbat together here in song, which Rabbi Hyman, Cantor Hirschenfang, and Cantor Goldman will lead us in a favorite of Oseh Shalom.
No.
Adon Olam. Adon Olam asher malach b'terem kol yitzir nivra li'ed na'asa v'chefzo kol hazai melech shemo nikra ve'acharei kichlot hakol levado yimloch nora ve'hu haya ve'hu hoveh ve'hu yiyeh b'tifara.
Vihu echad v'yein sheni lahamshilo lehachbira v'li reishit v'li tachlit v'lo haoz v'hamisra vihu eli v'chai goali v'tzorchav li b'yitzara vihu nisi umanos li minat kosi biyom ekra.
Biyado afkid ruchi ve'eti shan ve'aira v'imruchi gviati Adonai li ve'lo ira.
Shabbat Shalom, and we thank everybody for being here, and we call it our Zoom, our Oneg Shmooze time. I don't know how well we could do that with all these people, but we're happy to stay on. And if Reb Simcha, now I did a gallery view, so I lost him, but he's on here somewhere. I don't know if people have more questions or comments. I'm
Over
sure.
here, if I,
there you are in the center of my
right,
screen. There's so many little boxes. It's wonderful. Yes, is it possible to get recorded? What I would do, I've recorded it. I guess I could stop now. I'm not going to send it out to